Welcome to this episode of Sunny's Silver Linings. Sunny's guest today is Jennifer Bleam, owner and founder of MSP Sales Revolution. Today, Jennifer and Sunny talk about driving leads to close, how to improve your close rate, tracking best-in-class metrics, and so much more. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Sunny Kayla. Over to you, Sunny.
Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sunny. Happy to be here.
And today, the topic that we have today is cybersecurity and selling cybersecurity, because, if you look at the overall ecosystem, there is just so much demand from small businesses for cybersecurity products, services. But a lot of our MSP friends, they are struggling to sell and take that full advantage or unleash that potential, when it comes to they being MSSP and being able to sell effectively. So we are here to talk about that today, and you are the expert. I want to start with, first of all, your journey a little bit. So can you talk to me a little bit more about your background and how you got into more of being that expert to teach MSPs how to sell cybersecurity?
So my husband actually has his own managed service company.
Okay.
We are right outside of Washington, D.C., and I helped him with his sales and marketing for years. And then I shifted over to the vendor side, and I eventually found myself at a cybersecurity company. We were selling our solution into the MSP space. MSSP wasn't really an acronym that was discussed then. And so we were selling a next gen EDR solution to MSPs. And what we realized is that our clients would buy an initial block of, say 20 or 30 licenses. And in a year, they still hadn't deployed those 20 or 30 licenses. And we realized that what was happening was a challenge to sell the solution, because of course they would buy it from us. They would want to mark it up 2 or 3 times or bundle it with their offering. And they didn't know how to articulate the value proposition to their clients, who were largely small business owners. And so because I was heading up sales and marketing for that vendor, I ended up having a 2-pronged approach. Not only did I need to figure out the vendor's go-to-market strategy and how do we articulate the value to the MSPs, but how do we also help the MSP to resell our solution? And so I really had 2 audiences that I had to help the MSP understand the value, but then encourage them to take off that technical hat and now put on the business owner hat to have that owner to owner conversation and articulate the value prop. So that was really my first foray into helping MSPs learn how to sell.
Yeah. And how your Sandler training type of background helped you? So is there any element there that helped you there?
So I have a ton of Sandler training. I also trained with several of the big names inside of our industry, and I'm a voracious reader. So I was able to take the Sandler pieces and some of the other trainings that I've gotten over the years and put them into my own framework. So probably the biggest Sandler thing that I teach to my clients is the whole concept of an upfront contract. That is definitely a Sandler concept, which is simply, here's the purpose of our call. At the end of the call, if I feel like there's a need, I'm going to share that with you. And is it okay if I share that with you? And could you tell me if you don't think I'm a fit? That's a rough idea of what an upfront contract is. And that, of course, is crucial to being a professional salesperson.
Yeah. So now let's talk about sales process, right? So at the end of the day, it's about the sales playbook, sales process, and everything starts with that overall discovery, right? So, and you have a unique perspective on discovery. Can you please share that with us?
Yeah, 100%. I love talking about sales process, especially in this industry, because we are very process oriented on the operations side. We have a lot of SOPs and workflows, and that's the way most MSPs' brains work. It's almost in a flow chart manner. But for some reason, when we get to sales and to discovery, it's using the creative part of our brain perhaps. And so having a flow chart isn't really something that's been considered usually. And so when I look at discovery, the traditional way of looking at discovery is, and this is very much a Sandler thing, is find the pain. If you can uncover, 3 pieces of pain or 5 pieces of pain, now the MSP can swoop in and solve that problem, or solving for the pain, almost like it's an algebra problem. And I look at discovery very, very differently. I believe that discovery is for you as the salesperson, for you as the MSP, to help the prospect discover that they are underserved, that they are underprotected, and that there is uncovered risk that they're not aware of. And so discovery really isn't for the MSP, because I would guess that most people in your audience that are listening to this, they don't discover much new. They already know what they're going to discover, which is servers that are unprotected, or perhaps backups that aren't running, maybe some shadow IT. They're not going to discover anything. Where the magic happens is when they help the prospective client become aware or discover that there is a challenge. Now the MSP can step in and solve that challenge. But it's not, the discovery is not, oh, how many boxes can I tick off? And I've now gotten enough pain that I can solve the problem. That's not what discovery is. That's completely the wrong perspective.
Yeah, so from my experience as MSP owner, and I have the technical background as well, which I share that common thing with a lot of MSP owners. So my way of discovery was use network with Detective. So that now is bought by Kaseya. So back in the days, so you go there and then you run that tool. And as you said, it was like, okay, here is my standard solution stack. Here is my tool set. And I'm going to go in there and discover what the network health looks like. And then see, okay, what maps here. But the perspective that you're sharing here is that seeking understanding from the customer in terms of what their pain is. So going deeper into that, right?
Yes. And I love, one of my sales mentors instilled the seek to understand, that if you walk into really any relationship to try to understand where the other person is coming from, but of course in a sales relationship, seek to understand, what is it that the prospect cares about? They probably don't care about artificial intelligence and machine learning and EDR, MDR, XDR, SOC, SIM, SOAR. None of that matters to them. That's just noise. But what they do care about is being able to do business, create their widget, or bill their time, or protect their intellectual property. So when you can you're in the discovery process, and if you're able to tie the things that you're helping the prospect discover, you tie those to the things that they care about, that's when you have magic. Because otherwise you're almost speaking different languages. You're saying, oh, I've discovered there's a problem with your server, but I can fix it. The prospect is saying, I mean, what problem? There hasn't been a problem. The server's working, we're functioning, we're business as usual. How big can this problem really be? But if you say, we've discovered a problem, and here's how it's going to impact your ability to ABC, now we have a conversation. Now we're on the same page.
Yeah.
And I'm often surprised by MSPs who walk into sales conversations and they've never done any detective work, if you will, on what makes this business tick. What kind of a business is this? And who are you speaking to? Because the CEO and owner, founder, that type of person has different concerns than an office manager or a practice manager. They're wired differently. And so you need to understand, how does their business work, so that when you do find a problem, which we know you will find a problem, you can explain not solving this problem, or not patching this problem, or not updating this, or not getting the latest, greatest security offer is going to impact your company, your role, the things you care about. That's where the magic happens. That's where you can close the deal.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you said, that seeking understanding, like no matter what relationship you go into, it just works. And what you just said also works, I think, everywhere, right? That overall, understanding the outcome, the impact, and in this case, based on the persona, based on the person that you're talking to, that's what I heard you say, that if you're talking to the office manager, so in this MSP space, Jennifer, your consumer or the decision maker at that consumer is going to be in a small business like a law firm of 10 people. Normally office manager deals with the IT vendor. And if there is a little bit bigger small big business, then there's probably like the IT manager. So know your persona. And if you're going to use EDR with the office manager, they may not know. If you
Yes.
will use the EDR with probably IT manager, may know if they're good IT people. But if you're talking to the C-level person, for example, a CEO, the business owner of their law firm, in that case, that person just wants to make sure that their overall legal information is protected and their business won't shut down as a result of cyber attack, for example, right? That there are a lot of businesses, they just shut down with the ransomware, to a lot of things that happen. So there's a lot of liability that comes with small business not having the right security posture. And
Yes.
you talking to that person in their language. So what I heard you say is know who your audience is that you're talking to during the discovery process, and then make it a little bit more business if it's C-level, and really understand what their pain point is, really understand what problem matters to them and how can you be their hero to solve that problem.
100%. I love the recap.
Yeah, and so let's move into the closing piece. So you have you have like a special kind of overall framework, teaching tools to help MSPs understand how, now that you have the discovery, you have a well-qualified lead. It's a MQL or SQL, whatever you call it. Now, how you drive that from that point to close? So what's your take on this?
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so the way I get to that close, we'll talk about the close itself in a minute, because I'm a little contrarian with the close, the concept of closing the sale as well. But the three ingredients that you need inside of any sale is to help reveal that there is a gap, and that revealing of the gap is what we talked about with the discovery process. So we are helping take the blinders off. The prospect thought everything was rosy and amazing walking into this conversation, and now you, through your discovery process, have helped them to reveal, you've revealed to them there's a gap. And then we talked about the implications or the impact, the business outcomes. That's helping them to feel that gap. They're feeling, okay, I'm now aware that there's a challenge. I'm feeling it in my heart and emotionally, because we all make decisions emotionally. And then the last step is closing, which is to heal the gap. And really, if you have done the first two things right, if you've helped them to see that there is indeed a problem, help them understand how this could impact their business, they've agreed this is not tenable, this is more risk than I'm willing to absorb, then the close is as simple as saying, I'm so glad we had this conversation. We can help. We work with businesses just like you all the time. Would you like me to tell you how we can heal this problem? We can take care of this issue. Would you help? Would you like me? It's literally just a simple question where you're asking permission to close the sale. That's really all that it is. And just when we talk about, beginning with the end in mind, we all want the close, but the way we get there is through a great discovery process and through the understanding of the implications, helping them to wrap their head and their heart around what that would look like if it did happen to them.
So give me an example of a question that you will ask.
Yeah, so my favorite question is, we've just looked at this problem and that problem. You've agreed that that level of risk, perhaps 3 weeks of downtime or 2.5 weeks of downtime, or the loss of intellectual property. You've just said, Sunny, that that's not acceptable to you. The good news is we can help with this. This is the type of risk that we mitigate all the time for companies just like you. This is where we shine. We do this really well. Can I tell you how we work with companies like you?
Mhm. Awesome. Thank you. Now, so you also talk about the conversion ratio, right? So kind of turning, so having that baseline for your close rate and then improving that close rate.
Yes.
So what are some strategies that MSPs can use to improve their close rate?
So it's interesting. So first of all, let's know what our close rate is, more than just a gut instinct, because I can typically, well, my close rate is about this much. I don't want to know about. I want you to track, just like with anything else in your business. Let's get a real baseline so that we then iterate and change, and we say, did we improve or did we not? It's like high school science class. We need that control first. So that's the first step. What is our close rate now? And then secondly, it is just like your technical processes where you start to document, whether it's on a whiteboard or just a simple Word document or a flowchart software. What is our process now? Because the process is what is leading to that close rate. Let me restate that though. That process, if you're following that process, is what is leading to the close rate. So, okay, let's say I have a 40% close rate. Do I have a solid process that's leading to a 40% close rate? Or am I no longer following that process because I got sloppy, or I rushed a step, or I forgot a step because I hadn't looked at my process before? And let's say that you are following your process perfectly. That process is what is leading to that 40% close rate. So if you want a 60% close rate or an 80% close rate, the process has to change, and then you have to be able to execute on the process. Then it becomes a matter of diagnosing, if you will, where your process is falling short. And most sales processes are quite similar to one another. We've got the warm up and the bonding, and then we have discovery, and then maybe we do a network audit or a pen test or a mini assessment or something like that. We present those findings, and then we ask for the sale. Well, every one of those steps is a failure point. And so now you are simply saying, how do I fix the failure? And I like to start at the bottom, because one of the biggest failures is not getting an answer, where we get to the end and we get the dreaded, I need to think about it. And so what if we engineered our sales process so that in an ideal world, we would never hear, I need to think about it. It will never be 0% of the time will you hear, I need to think about it. But you can actually work your process out in such a way so that you almost never hear, I need to think about it. And so if you diagnose, what is my process now? Am I following that process? And if so, it's leading me to a result I don't want, then the only way to change the result is to change the process.
That's awesome. So no, that's a lot of there are a lot of insights there, very valuable insights. And Jennifer, MSPs are big on benchmarking. You know how much they love, what is best in class number, Sunny?
Yes.
So what are you seeing in the industry in terms of close rate, best in class, or is there any number that someone is tracking where we can understand what that best in class is?
Yeah. Okay. So great question. And as with many things in business, the answer is it depends. And here's why. It depends where your leads are coming from. So a business that is based almost exclusively on referrals will have a tremendously high close rate, 80 to 90%. As soon as they shift to what I would call growth mode, where they continue to generate the referrals, but now we have colder traffic coming to us, maybe through paid ads or SEO or your typical ad sources. Now the leads are a little colder, and they are more difficult to close, which means you need a great sales process. Now, what's interesting, just to go after some specific numbers, I had a conversation about 8 months ago with a large company that does they are a sales enablement organization. And so therefore they've got some aggregate data. They can see deals moving through the pipelines across their whole MSP base, and what stage are they in, and when are we creating proposals and things of that nature. What they are seeing is that it is well below a 20% close rate from deal created to deal won. Now, maybe some of those deals shouldn't be created. Maybe somewhere in the sales process, we find out they're not actually a prospect. They're disqualified for some reason, but a sales close rate of below 20% it's average. I don't think most of your listeners want to be average, but it also represents a tremendous amount of time wasted, if you will, that either we're wasting time on prospects that aren't qualified, or we're pushing deals through the pipeline slower than we should, or we're pushing deals through the pipeline and then ultimately they don't buy from us, or they stay with the incumbent, which goes back to a sales process issue. So that's the average. What I'm hearing at the high end, I did have a prospective client insist that he had a 100% close rate. My next question was, well, what percentage of those deals were referrals? Because I believe the only way you can have a 100% close rate is if they are all referral driven. But I am hearing of 60, sometimes as high as 80% close rates in the industry. But again, it depends where your margins are. If you're the least expensive company out there, you can't sustain that for long, but you may be able to close a whole lot of deals. So it's a very tricky metric to try to even benchmark yourself against, because it's almost like trying to get a comp on a house when you're the only house in the country that has a pool and a large driveway and maybe a gated, and you're not in a community and you're on 12.5 acres of land. Well, how do you find a comparable, like you may be the only house like that. And so certainly find those benchmarks and always iterate and improve. But if you're aiming for the 60, 70, maybe 80% close rate, then I would argue that you are pretty close to best in class.
So what I'm hearing you say is there are a lot of variables. Every business is different.
Yes.
And their overall sales capability, their pricing and packaging, their brand, their like everything, right? So a lot of things come into the picture that it varies. Thank you for sharing that perspective on overall how MSPs can kind of measure their success. So it's really when it comes to cybersecurity as a opportunity, there are just so many opportunities, and that's going to kind of really accelerate in terms of more compliance coming to small, medium-sized businesses. And I believe even during recession, Jennifer, if there is a recession, this product will do well. Like the way during COVID, a lot of businesses were impacted, but small business IT, it got accelerated because of the digital solutions that small businesses wanted to go virtual, right? Go online. And I do see that the need of cybersecurity is going to keep going up as world is becoming more tech savvy, world is more dependent on tech, and small businesses are always going to be kind of those trusted advisors trusted advisors for small businesses are always going to be MSPs or MSSPs or any future acronym we all will come up with, like TSP, I heard recently, or TSSP, right? So whatever that acronym is, but you as a solution provider to small business, you will do well if you can build a cybersecurity capability and you have the capability to sell that product market fit. So market is really awesome, and this is the right product to be. So we are at the right time at the right place if we have the cybersecurity product, because market needs it. They desperately need that solution. So if we can build a sales capability, understand how we should go about discovery, how we should go about overall our closing best practices, and we focus on that close rate, then we can do well as a business. Our MSP friends can do well as businesses. So thank you so much for coming to the show and sharing your experience, your wisdom, your expertise with our MSP friends. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.